Welcome into the post-Thanksgiving Black Friday edition of the Sharp Football Show. So happy that you guys could be here. Hope that you guys had a wonderful and fun Thanksgiving with your family, Thanksgiving with all the food and the fixings and the beverages and the drinks and the potential debauchery that ensues after consuming said drinks and food with family. But I hope you also enjoyed the football. You know, some of the football, I'll just put it this way. You know, there's a lot of jokes and memes going around Twitter before, or X now, before the games even started about, you know, politics and families getting together and how raucous that was going to be potentially. And the one thing that could bring everybody together for Thanksgiving was watching Matt Eberflus botch the ending of that Lions-Bears football game. I think everybody could gather around the TV, no matter what your political beliefs are or how much you hate your mother-in-law or whatever's going on in your family, and watch that game together and see that ending, and everybody would get a good laugh and high five and just enjoy the ridiculousness of the way that game ended. So I hope that everybody had fun yesterday. Certainly from a betting perspective, we had a great day going 6-1, and we'll talk more about that later when we get into some special Black Friday discounts that we've got for you guys. But we have a great show on deck. I know a lot of people today in the content game, you know, I'm looking at some of the things that I follow, do tend to take Friday off, do tend to take Black Friday off and spend post-Thanksgiving with their family. You know, my family's not far away. I'll be hanging out with them later today, of course. But we wanted to go ahead and drop this show anyways and give you guys our very best of bets from the college, NFL prop game, like we always do on every single Friday of the football season. So we're here. We're back with you guys. Great show on deck. We've got Ryan McCrystal momentarily. He's going to get into some of his best bets, breaking down 3 different college football games. Then we're going to bring in Pam Maldonado. She's going to be breaking down a couple NFL games and props that she likes in those games, and a couple of totals as well. And then we've got, of course, Joe Gibbs, who's going to be breaking down a couple of the ref angles that we're going to need to discuss and pay attention to for Sunday's games. And I'll drop a couple of props that I like as well at the end of the show. So completely packed show, just like normal, just like probably your stomach feels after, you know, in your waistline after that nice Thanksgiving day of eating yesterday. And with that said, just want to welcome everybody into the chat. Appreciate you guys. DM Pens, thanks for doing the show today. Ron G, awesome plays yesterday. Looking forward to wave 2. Yeah, we did wave 1. If you're not on board from the props perspective on the client side of things, hopefully you get on this week, because we're giving it 73% off everything you can get on for 1 week and get 73% off. But we did wave 1. We do these by waves. We got wave 2 coming up this afternoon. We've got a lot of different people here in the chat. And if you guys want to chat with us on a Friday, Black Friday, you're sitting around shopping for the next Amazon Lightning deal or whatever you might be doing, make sure that you guys go over to YouTube, search for Sharp Football Analysis, and that's where you can participate in the chat. If you're following along on X, I love you on X. Thank you so much for that. Make sure that you go over to YouTube as well. Subscribe to the Sharp Football Analysis channel. Give this show a thumbs up. We're streaming live there, and participate in the chat. I'll answer some of your questions and we'll shout you guys out. So with that said, Matt, let's go ahead and get on to the first topic. All right, we got to talk about this Matt Eberflus situation. Obviously, this is where the analysis starts with post-Thanksgiving game breakdown. And what could they have done here? And this is a trend. This is more than just an occasional thing. This is a habit that we're seeing out of Matt Eberflus's situational football that's costing the Chicago Bears games. And this is a team that, yeah, maybe they shouldn't have won that game yesterday. Maybe they were outplayed by the Detroit Lions, but they got themselves back into that game, and they played well enough down the stretch to be in a position to, at worst, send that game to overtime with a field goal attempt. Now the kicker needs to make it, but you need to at least get that kickoff. And there was no excuse why you didn't get to kickoff. And what I'm going to do in a second is we're going to play that last sequence. And Matt, I'm going to ask you to pause it at a certain point in time. But what I've done in this sequence that I don't know that other networks have shown this yet or zoomed in on this aspect of it yet. Maybe they have. And so you're seeing it for the second time, but I haven't seen it anywhere else. I've got a cutout zoom in of Matt Eberflus standing on the sideline, paired up with what else is happening here in this final sequence. And when they cut back to the main shot of, it's not necessarily the all 22, but the main shot of the football field from the sidelines, you can see Matt Eberflus standing here from at least 15 seconds until that ball is snapped. So Matt, why don't you go ahead and play this clip, and I'll ask you to pause it at a certain point.
No one touched him. And down goes
31 seconds is when you could have called a timeout. At 31 seconds, you could have called a timeout.
Well, this is supposed to be a quarterback draw. They have a light box.
Matt, get ready to pause it. Pause it. Okay. This cutout right here, Matt, you could probably go big screen on this right now and just take me off of here because we're only going to do this for a second. We probably won't get flagged by the governmental agencies or whatnot for going live here with this clip. But this circle that I've got up here in the top right, this is a blow up of Matt Eberflus standing next to the official. Now keep in mind that there was 31 seconds on the clock when he was sacked and the play was down. The official blew his whistle, like signifying that the play is over. At 31 seconds, Flus, who's literally standing next to the side judge, could have called a timeout. So the Chicago Bears would have had 3rd and 26 with the football at the 41-yard line, needing what, like 4 yards to get that quote-unquote field goal target line on a 3rd down play call, okay? And they would have had 31 seconds. So even if you're tackled in bounds after that play, you could have run up and had the field goal because you can't spike it. It's 3rd and 26, right? Think of, the other thing that allowing you, let me slow down. The other thing that calling a timeout would allow you to do is set your team up for what to expect. And that's the thing that Flus failed to do when the Washington Commanders had their Hail Mary shot, right? He had 3 timeouts in his pocket and didn't call any of them. And you should be using your timeouts to prepare your team, even if you don't think you need to stop the clock, is to prepare and coach up your team for what you need them to do. And so if you had called a timeout with 31 seconds left, what you could have had ready is your field goal unit on the sideline, because the odds of you're not trying at this point to throw the football down the field and get a first down, right? You're not trying to get 26 yards here. There's 31 seconds left. What you're trying to do is get into makeable field goal range. And if the Detroit Lions are smart at this point in time, I'm not sure how they would play it. They may be covering the sideline routes to prevent you from getting out of bounds. And thus, you need your field goal unit ready so that if you get a 10-yard gain on a pass play in the middle of the field where it's open, that you can get your field goal unit on in time because you cannot spike the football. It would be 4th and 16 at that point, and you're 10 yards closer to the end zone, and you need to get your field goal unit. So you've got your field goal kicker ready. He's already taken a couple of practice kicks during the timeout on the sideline. He's ready to go. He's right at the edge of the sideline to run on the field. You've got all the protection unit ready to run on the field if you need to, and you're set. Obviously, you'd love to throw the ball to the sideline and get out of bounds and get those 10 or 15 yards, but you may not be able to. So you're setting that up. You're also preparing your quarterback for what he needs to do and where he should be throwing. You're getting your best play call in there. You're having time to do all of these things if you're using your timeout. So it's in addition to just stopping the clock, yes, but it's also the coaching that is allowed to occur during this period. Instead, what you've got is we don't get the cut back to this shot until about 15 seconds left in the game. And you'll run it here until about 6 seconds, 5 or 6 seconds when the ball is snapped. And you just watch Matt Eberflus on the sideline. And this guy is standing right next to this side judge, this official right on the sideline, who's staring right down the line of scrimmage. And Matt Eberflus is standing there just like you were standing watching your TV, just like a Chicago Bears fan was standing in that stadium, just like any of the teammates on the defense are standing there along the sideline, as if he is an observer, as if he has no ability to do anything or contribute anything. Watch what this guy does in terms of he just stands there and spins his arm like, hurry up, let's go, guys, let's go. Like he's cheering on a team, as opposed to an active coach who could call a timeout and do something about it. So go ahead and play this, Matt.
It's 3rd and 26. They have one timeout left.
This is like the
Pause it, Matt. Pause it. Can you go back? I want this full screen. Don't pull me up. I want you to see how close he remains next to this side judge. So if you can rewind it maybe 5 seconds here, if possible. Okay, that's perfect. Just play it from here. Watch Matt Eberflus and watch what this guy's doing next to this referee.
Clock is running with 15 seconds, and it's 3rd and 26. They have one timeout left.
This is like the light box. You could have gotten numbers, but just didn't.
You better hurry.
Oh,
no. This is
no.
disaster in the making here. You're going to have to do something when it comes down to this play.
All right. I mean, I can't help it. I can't help but laugh. You can bring me back up. This guy, Eberflus, is standing there doing this, like encouraging that he gets both hands into it, as if like that's going to do anything, right? As if as if Caleb Williams is looking at him. People are saying this is on Caleb Williams. He should be more aware. I get it. I get it. Like he technically should. He is a rookie quarterback in a difficult situation, and he hasn't shown the ability to be like super cerebral in moments like this. You are the head freaking coach. You should be the one in charge. So you could throw out it's on Caleb Williams stuff as well out the window. This is on the head coach for not setting his players up for success. And it clearly has shown that he learned nothing after what happened in that Washington Commanders loss, where he was on defense and had multiple timeouts and did not use them. An embarrassment to the coaching profession, in my opinion. Standing there acting like a cheerleader while you have a timeout in your pocket. He would have, you know what was funny about this whole thing? We were all calling, like the jokes were, how terrible this team looked in the first half. You should fire this guy, like fire him at halftime. Has any coach ever been fired at halftime? Then they come out and look somewhat competent as they get a couple of stops for the Lions and ultimately put up a little points. And then this guy just goes and lays the bigger egg possible in the second half. A nutcase. He absolutely should be fired for sure. And I don't understand. I mean, good on the Bears backers for covering the spread here, but this coach, just something else. All right, Matt, let's go to the next topic. This one is another look back to the games yesterday, and I think at this point, I know it's going to continue to be brought up because of the results from yesterday, but at this point, is my belief that we should bury the Dolphins in cold weather narrative. Tua goes out there and throws 37 of 46 for 365 yards, 2 touchdowns and no interceptions. It's not that they can't win in cold. It's not that Tua can't play in the cold. It's not that this team isn't built for that. They just can't beat good teams. They are not fundamentally sound in all phases of the game. Their short passing attack is definitely there to sustain offense and to be productive. They go out there, they get a stop defensively the first series of the game. The ball is punted back and they fumble it and set up an easy 7 points for the Green Bay Packers. Right now, the Miami Dolphins have shown no ability to run the football. Right, they're not giving their support to Tua and the passing attack with the running attack. We know that they're not explosive right now. This season, since Tua has come back, I tweeted out some statistics on this yesterday, that this offense went from the second most rate of plays of 20 plus yards last year to like the 25th most rate of 20 plus yards this year, with Tua back at quarterback, right? Obviously, take out the games that he wasn't playing. That's not how they're designed right now. And you can't just tell me that it's because, or I'm not saying you can't tell me, it's a fact that it's not just because they're trying to get the ball out quicker from Tua because of his injury. That's what they were doing last year as well. They had one of the quickest time to throws. They were trying to get the ball out super quickly last year as well, because Tua had all those injuries and missed the end of the season the year before that. Last year, Mike McDaniel, starting the 2023 season, overhauled everything, right? They were using high rates of play action, throwing the ball at the quickest time to throw of anybody, but still pushing the ball a little bit down the field. That is not what they were able to do this year. They're still getting rid of the ball quickly, but it's not going down the field as much, and they're not having those explosive plays. They were getting more explosive play support last year from the run game. That has evaporated. As A-Chain has been used more in the ground game, they have lost some of their explosiveness in the ground game. And they have little explosiveness in the pass game as well. They were pushing the ball down the field a little bit more in the past. They were having opportunities to attack further down the field in the past to the perimeter. And they're not having those abilities this season. And so this offense is not nearly as explosive. They're not able to put up points as quickly in games. They have to have sustained, methodical offense, but they're getting very little support from their ground game right now. Be it the offensive line, be it the fact that A-Chain is being used a little bit more. I mean, I thought Mostert getting a little bit more involved in last week's game added a little bit of punch, but A-Chain had 7 carries for 14 yards. That's 2 yards a carry. Mostert had 5 carries for 19 yards. That's 3.8 yards per carry. It's not the type of production on the ground that is going to be able to support your offense. And then, of course, on the defense, kudos to the Green Bay Packers, Matt LaFleur, for game planning ways to attack this defense. Of course, we saw they were down corners to enter the game, and then they lost multiple corners during the game, and there was very little opportunity. We saw that the Packers would try to turn to the run a little bit. They're up, 14 points. They're up 16 points. Let's come out and run the ball a little bit. They didn't have a ton of success running the ball. So they're just like, screw this. Let's just pass it because passing is so efficient. And they're just picking up a first down. Okay, we'll run it 1 or 2 times to turn the clock. Then we'll pass it again to make sure that we convert the first down. When they needed to, they just threw it. And they were having success because of their edges in both pass protection as well as the cornerback play of the Miami Dolphins. So I don't like the narrative that Dolphins can't win in cold weather. I think the narrative is that Dolphins are still failing to beat good teams in the NFL, and they cannot run the ball and they cannot support their offense right now. And, they've got a lot of work to do this offseason. Still, it's unfortunate, but the answer is still. They've got to figure out something else that they can do here because this is just a team that's not that serious right now. That's not a serious contender in the AFC. And I don't think if you started the season with a team in similar shape, except healthier, they would be in contention for the AFC. So I don't know the strategy they need to take. I'll spend a lot of time looking at that in the offseason, but they've got to come up with some other things to do. Brett says McDaniel's play calling in key moments was awful. Supposed genius mind. I don't disagree that McDaniel sometimes does have poor play calls. They fired Eberflus? Are we serious here? Did we get Eberflus fired? Somebody in the chat tell me if Chris is correct here. Did we get Eberflus fired? Bears are firing Matt Eberflus. I see it here. Wow. Okay. We are correct. They need to fire this guy, and he was fired. I also want to say this. This is the most hilarious thing. I tweeted this out earlier today. This is just breaking news. This is awesome. Let me try to. This is crazy. This is crazy. Matt Eberflus has been fired by the Chicago Bears. Obviously well-deserved. Let me go to one of my tweets from yesterday where I wrote this. Let Let me find it here. Oh my God, Thomas Brown is the interim head coach. These guys don't know what they're doing. Thomas Brown. I don't know. Thomas Brown is not a great interim head coach. But, I mean, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. The season is obviously done for, but I would certainly not be entrusting Thomas Brown with being my interim head coach. I don't think that he is fit for that. Let me just get in here and type this up, because I do want to say one thing here on this before we move topics. Matt, why don't you bring in Ben Johnson to save the day? Okay. Matt, why don't you pull up some of these guys' comments while I'm trying to type up this tweet? So DM Penn says, fired the day after Thanksgiving. That's rough, but necessary. All right, we got the chat. Yeah, this is wild that we just so happen to be live here after I spend the first part of the show commenting on this guy. He had a press conference earlier today. What did he say? He had a press conference earlier today where he said the following. Where is it here? He said, the operation wasn't fast enough on the final play. He acknowledged that calling a timeout right when Caleb Williams was sacked was an option. An option. He says that was an option, as opposed to being a requirement. Just ridiculous from Matt Eberflus to say that that was an option. Now, I get it. Why is he coming and why are they forcing him to do a press conference and then firing him the last minute? Were they waiting to fire him to see if he was going to take responsibility for that? Because here he's coming out and saying that it was an option, that calling the timeout was an option, when he should have said that we messed up, we should have called the timeout, that was on me. Would they not have fired him if he said that? Like, this is the most bizarre thing that they waited until this morning to fire him. Maybe they decided to have their meetings this morning and then make their decision. But why make the guy do a press conference? I know the Bears fans, their feedback on this is that he should have been fired a long time ago. And my opinion is the same. You cannot bring a quarterback in, a young quarterback, a top drafted quarterback in, Caleb Williams, and have him working with Matt Eberflus and have him working with the offensive coaching staff that they brought in this season. You needed to fire Matt Eberflus after last season, bring in an offensive-minded guy, and have him work with Caleb Williams. Now Caleb Williams' rookie season is gone, and you have very little time. The time is ticking so quickly on these young quarterbacks with regard to the value that rookie contract is able to give your team. That rookie deal contract where you've got those 4 years where the quarterback salary is the cheapest and the best bargain that you will ever get if he ends up being good. And if he doesn't end up being good, then it doesn't matter. But if he is good in that period of time where he's got those 4 years for you at super cheap, that's when you can take leaps and bounds and have a lot of success. And they just wasted that first year by not firing Matt Eberflus before this season. And then they're psychologically messing up Caleb Williams by having him work with all these coordinators. This is now going to be like the second or third guy that he's working with from a play calling perspective. None of these guys are any good. We knew that they weren't good before the season started in terms of the system that he's in, the offense, the play calling, the support structure, the coddling, the coaching that would take place after losses, the film study. Like, you need a guy in there who's going to be good at all of these things to help your young quarterback. And these guys that they've had supporting Caleb Williams have been terrible. So we can come back to this at other points in time. I see your guys' comments. Never. I am definitely not qualified to be a head coach or an offensive coordinator. I like working with offensive coordinators, play callers. Sometimes they are head coaches. Sometimes they're just offensive coordinators. I've also worked with quarterback coaches and know a number of them around the NFL. And some of those guys maybe are due a coaching position, from a play calling perspective, but certainly not qualified to be doing any of that full time. But they need to bring in somebody with an offensive-minded mentality who is good with working with young quarterbacks. And I can think of a few such guys. Some of them are employed that might be getting fired that could work with Caleb Williams potentially in Chicago. But definite mistake to keep Matt Eberflus on to start this season. And at least he's provided a lot of good content for us. I mean, I'm in the content game now as well. And opened the show showing the clip of Matt Eberflus standing on the sideline like a cheerleader, watching the time tick off the clock, rooting for his team like you were on the sidelines if you're a Chicago Bears fan at your home watching the game on Thanksgiving. Just a disgrace as to what he was doing and not understanding that he's the one who's losing these games for them. Okay, with that said, let's get into Ryan. We're backed up here with our content. So, Matt, hopefully Ryan's still here. Let's bring Ryan on. Oh, wait. I'm sorry. Before we bring Ryan on, a couple things, Matt. Bring me back. All right. Got a couple of things to get into here. The first one is our Black Friday sale. Gone 30 minutes, haven't talked about the Black Friday sale in detail. So you can see it in the top left-hand corner. Use the code SHARP73. You get 73% off everything on the website. Why 73% off? Because our computer totals are hitting 73% this year. They've been doing outstanding. This is the bread and butter. This is how I got into the game years and years ago, decade ago, is by being accurate with my computer totals. And we are still having the same level of accuracy decades later. We went 5-0 on Monday. We went 6-1 on Thanksgiving yesterday. And we also hit, not included in that record, 4 different long shot bets of plus 250, plus 350. Those don't get included in that because those are long shots, but they do get included in a dollar amount. And a $100 better is now up over 11,000 this season following the play. So use the code SHARP73, get 73% off anything on the website. That includes getting on board just for 1 week. You want to get on board for 1 week for like 20 some dollars? Try it out. Get on board for 1 week. I highly encourage you get on board for the rest of the regular season. The price drops massively, 73% off for these type of results. It's my best season that we've ever had. I don't understand why you wouldn't just try to get on board for the full rest of the season. Let's try it out that way because it is the best deal. We are 59% overall this season, 306 wins and 214 losses. I mean, 59%, you could say, well, we would like to be 60 some odd percent. We're 73% on the small sample size stuff, right? The computer totals, 73%. You can see in the top left there, our elevated props were hitting 63% of the strongest props that we like the most. But overall, for over 500 plays this season with high volume hitting 59%, that is how you make a bunch of money betting the NFL, 59% on a ton of plays. And that's what we're at. Over 500 plays, won over 300 of them, 59%. The other thing that I want to get into quickly is we partnered up with Sleeper. And if you're not familiar with what Sleeper is, it is an app that you can get on your phone. I highly recommend you go download the Sleeper app today because you can get a $1,500 match if you use the code SHARP when you sign up. So you deposit $500, they'll deposit $500. You deposit $100, they'll deposit $100. You get your account balance doubled up to $1,500. This is free money that you can then use to spend playing on basically picking more or less than player props. It's a tricky way to say it because it's a fantasy site, but you're using a lot of the player prop ideas that I am sharing and I'm giving out to subscribers, and you're basically parlaying those together. So go over to Sleeper and use the Sleeper app, and you can get more that you're getting. You can pick Bucky Irving more than his rushing yards or less than his rushing yards, and you pair it with something else, at least two. And so you're basically pairing these two things together. It's a way to get down on player props and to increase your payout on these player props. And we are giving you a ton of those over at Sharp Football Analysis to subscribers. $1,500 price match if you use the code SHARP. The other thing is what Matt is playing here on the boost. If you go in there today, if you sign up today, use the code SHARP, you will also see this on your account where you spin this wheel, you hit like spin, and it'll go through and give you a boost on one selection, a profit boost, a payout boost of up to 100%. So in this case, I recorded my screen, I spun it, I got 30%, but you could get more or less than 30% when you spin it yourselves. They also have a couple of discounts. I think it's Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. They've reduced their yardage props for Sunday's games. And so if you want to go in there and add them to the two that you are the two props that you're pairing together, you can get those at a massive discount. Sometimes they even do like free squares where it's like CJ Stroud over half a yard, and you can pair that with something else. So at any rate, use the code SHARP, go get the Sleeper app, get up to the $1,500 match, do it today so that you can get this boost and you can put some of the props that we're giving you in a parlay. I highly recommend that you go and check that out. Okay, let's get to college football, and I'm going to bring on Ryan McCrystal. Now, Ryan is hitting 58% on the show on over 30 some odd plays. So that's a really strong win percentage. We're going to try to get it back over 60%. He's got 3 games today, and we're going to dive into the first one, Ryan. Texas minus 5.5 at Texas A&M. The 10-1 Longhorns are ranked 3rd, and they're visiting the Texas A&M Aggies, who are ranked 19th. Now, Texas A&M narrowly lost to Auburn last week. You gave us Auburn. We cashed on Auburn last week, winning outright 43-41 in an overtime thriller that I don't think I'll soon forget. That was a lot of fun being on the right side in that game and winning in multiple overtimes. The game is in Auburn, and the game is in Texas A&M, but you are taking the Longhorns minus 5.5. The winner will advance to the SEC championship game to face Georgia. So why don't you tell us, Ryan, why you like Texas in this spot?
Yeah, really excited for this game. Biggest game of the weekend, clearly. Probably the biggest game in Texas A&M has played since they won the 1939 national championship in the Sugar Bowl. Possibly the biggest game that's ever been played in College Station, because the winner of this, obviously huge rivalry game that they haven't played in 11 years, winner goes to the SEC championship. It's essentially a conference semifinal game right here. And obviously the winner basically locks themselves into a playoff spot, it would seem, or at least Texas A&M would set themselves up for a chance to get to the playoff. Loser, if Texas A&M loses, they're out for sure. If Texas loses, their spot is iffy. They're probably still in, but they would not have a very strong resume. So they would very much be put themselves on the bubble if they can't win. There's a bunch of reasons here, though, why I like Texas to win this game and cover the spread. The first big factor, it's the Texas offensive line. It's probably the best unit in the country, which is critical to be strong in that area going up against Texas A&M, because their strength on defense is that pass rush. I think Texas is able to shut down that pass rush and gain a pretty significant advantage here. Texas ranks 10th in the country in opponent-adjusted pressure rate allowed. And that's particularly impressive because of the style of offense that they play. Quinn Ewers takes a traditional dropback of 3 or more yards at the 10th highest rate in the country. You're taking a traditional dropback, you're going to see a lot more pressure than if you're playing in a faster-paced offense. The teams that rank near the top in this category are often air raid teams that just get the ball out quickly to kind of dink and dunk in that fast up-tempo offense down the field. They negate the pass rush by just getting rid of the ball too fast. Texas actually, Ewers sits back in the pocket a fair amount, and for them to still rank in the top 10 in pressure rate allowed just shows how dominant those 5 guys are on the offensive line. So I think that's one area where they held an obvious advantage and negate Texas A&M's greatest strength. The second factor relates to that a little bit, is the passing attack and the way that Texas attacks. Now, last year, we saw Quinn Ewers really improve as a downfield passer and throw downfield quite a bit. It's a big part of their offense when they had Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell. Those guys are in the NFL now, so they've had to adjust a little bit because they don't quite have the weapons to stretch the field as much as they did last year. In fact, 56% of Ewers' throws travel 5 or fewer yards downfield. That's the 7th highest rate in the country. So even though he's dropping back at a high rate and sitting in the pocket, he's not finding receivers downfield, so he's having to settle for a lot of shorter throws. And that's a problem in some games. I think that could be a problem for Texas in the playoff in certain matchups. But it's actually the perfect way to attack this Texas A&M defense. So they have a pretty good deep secondary. They've defended the deep ball well, but underneath routes, they've struggled a little bit. In fact, on throws 5 or fewer yards downfield, Texas A&M ranks 124th in yards allowed per reception. I talked about this stat just last week in that game against Auburn. It was one of the reasons why we were on the Auburn side, was because Auburn liked to do a similar thing, attacking with some shorter throws. And it was an area where I felt like even Auburn's relatively weak offense would be able to attack this A&M defense. Texas, obviously, a much more talented offense than Auburn has, and they have sort of that same style where they can attack underneath and exploit this weakness in Texas A&M. The third factor, flipping over to the other side of the ball, is Texas's run defense. I think Texas probably has the best defensive unit in the country, so it's going to be a little bit of a mismatch for that A&M offense to begin with. But schematically, I think Texas also matches up really well against this Aggie offense. Texas defensive coordinator, Pete Kwiatkowski, he likes to line up in a 3-3-5 formation a lot. We've seen this across college football in recent years with more teams going to this 3-3-5 or sometimes a 2-4 scheme, and just getting better athletes on the field, because you have to cover more ground in college football with the wide hash marks. You want faster athletes on the field. So that's what Texas does, is their base defense. And it's the perfect way to stop Texas A&M, because Texas A&M's offense, run by their new offensive coordinator, Colin Klein, in his first year after coming over from running this similar system at Kansas State for a while, where he had a lot of success there. They use the quarterback, Marcel Reed, to run a lot. And they also, with their running backs, they like to run outside the tackles to try to get them opportunities in space on the outside. So having better athletes on the field in this 3-3-5 formation that Texas leaned on is a good strategy against that type of offensive scheme. You don't need big bodies because they're not running right up the middle very often. In fact, Texas, they rank 4th in the country in yards per attempt allowed to running backs on the outside, giving up just 2.7 yards per attempt. That's critical to stopping A&M's running backs, because they rank 2nd in the SEC. 61% of A&M's attempts are outside the tackle. So Texas, perfectly built to stop Texas A&M's running backs. As far as stopping Marcel Reed, I think Texas can do that too. I'm going to turn to opponent-adjusted data here, because rushing yards allowed to quarterbacks has a lot to do with what types of quarterbacks you play, right? But based on opponent-adjusted data, Texas is allowing 23% fewer yards than expected to quarterbacks this year. That ranks 14th in the country. So Marcel Reed is a threat. He's probably going to have a few big runs by getting outside the pocket. But overall, Texas has done a great job of shutting that down. So that's 3 really critical factors in this game that we just went through, 3 critical points of emphasis, and all 3 pretty emphatically side with Texas. So I think even though this is going to be a tough environment for Texas on the road, this is a veteran Texas team that has been there before. Obviously, they played in the playoff last year. They went to Alabama and beat Nick Saban's Alabama team last year on the road. They are tested for this road environment, so I don't think they're going to be phased. I like Texas to cover this spread and possibly win pretty easily.
All right. Well, we will be on Texas with you, my friend. And let's move to another game in the SEC. We got South Carolina catching 3 points, taking on Clemson. 8-3 South Carolina, 9-2 Clemson. South Carolina is riding a 5-game win streak. Clemson is riding a 3-game win streak. Both these teams played cupcakes last week, Wofford and the Citadel. Show us why we should be backing South Carolina, taking the 3 points in Clemson, Ryan.
Yeah, you've been following the show the second half of this season. This is going to sound a little bit repetitive because we picked against Clemson a few times, but it's really all about the Clemson run defense. It's one of the worst in the country. Looking at opponent-adjusted data, Clemson ranks 106th in yards allowed before contact to running backs and 109th in yards allowed after contact. So they've been a bad matchup. They've gone into a few games with a bad matchup. We bet them against Louisville earlier this year when Louisville won. Unfortunately, we also bet that Virginia Tech game, which didn't go as well, but we didn't know going into that game that Virginia Tech didn't have a single healthy running back. So that blew that out of the water. But, South Carolina, they are actually probably the worst matchup that Clemson has faced all season, or at least that's the Georgia game, obviously. But looking at all of Clemson's opponents this year, if we go back and look at their situational data, nobody runs the ball at a higher rate over expected than South Carolina. And they do so with a power running game, which has been a problem for Clemson this year. 230-pound running back Rocket Sanders is the focal point of their offense. So they're going to try to run the ball down Clemson's throat. They try to run the ball down everybody's throat, and that's just happens to match up with the perfect way to attack the Clemson defense. Now, maybe Clemson tries to adjust some things on defense, knowing that they're going to do that. But I don't think there's really anything Clemson can do, because even if we look at Clemson's numbers with a stacked box, when they're stacking the box against teams, they still rank 111th in yards allowed per attempt to running back. So there's really been nothing that they've been able to do to adjust to improve this run defense. And with it being the one thing that South Carolina leans on week after week, I don't see any reason to think that they're not going to be able to just run the ball and control this game on the ground. Now, we've got to look at the other side of the ball, because Clemson's offense has done some damage at times this year. So even if South Carolina is able to run the ball up and down the field, it's possible Clemson matches them and puts up a big number by throwing the ball. I think this is a bad matchup for Clemson on that side of the ball also, though, because the strength of South Carolina's defense is its pass rush. If you watch them at all this year, you've seen possibly the best front four in all of college football and getting after the quarterback. In fact, on non-blitzes, South Carolina ranks third in the country in pressure rate. So they are going to get a lot of pressure on Cade Klubnik. Now, Klubnik is having a good year. Look at his numbers overall. They're really impressive. He's improved almost as much as any quarterback in the country. He's put up some big numbers. But I think it's been skewed a lot by the cupcake schedule Clemson has faced. Even within the ACC, they've had a relatively easy schedule. Clemson ranks 75th, though, in opponent-adjusted pressure rate allowed. So they do not have a good offensive line. In fact, they've never really had a great offensive line under Dabo Swinney. That's never been the strength of their team. Despite the fact that they rank in the bottom half of the country in that opponent-adjusted pressure rate stat, there have only been 4 games when Klubnik has been pressured at a rate of 33% or higher. That's not even a really high rate. 33% pressure rate in college football, that's a decent performance by defense. It's not a dominant performance by any means. But in those 4 games where the pressure rate did tick up to 33% or higher, Klubnik only averaged a combined 5.7 yards per attempt. So in these games when he has been pressured at a higher rate, it seems to have had a bit of a cumulative effect on the offense and really slowed down the passing attack. Now, South Carolina, they've generated a pressure rate of 33% or higher in 7 games this year, including 5 games where they've gone over 40% and just really dominated. So against this Clemson offensive line, I think the edge clearly goes to South Carolina. And based on how we've seen Klubnik perform in these games where he's been under a lot of pressure, I don't think Clemson is going to be able to put up the type of passing numbers they've had a few times this year. So I think Clemson controls this game on the ground from start to finish. I think Clemson has a hard time keeping up. I think South Carolina covers this 3-point spread and probably wins outright.
Outright, well, we would not mind seeing that. Anytime we're taking a short dog, love to bet a little bit on the money line as well, Ryan. So that would be great. This one is not a short dog. This is a big dog. Big dog Auburn plus 12.5 taking on Alabama. That line is still 12.5 at DraftKings, for example. But if you go to some other shops, it's down as low as 11. I'm seeing it 13 at Pinnacle. So this line is all over the place. So you guys need to shop around if you're looking to ride with Ryan on this next game. But Auburn, off of that overtime upset, travels to Tuscaloosa to take on the 8-3 Alabama Crimson Tide, which suffered a massive upset against Oklahoma last week, losing 24-3. Auburn has not won in Alabama since 2010, Ryan. This is the Iron Bowl. Love the Iron Bowl. Always tune into the Iron Bowl. It's one of my favorite big rivalry games in the college football calendar. Show us why we should be backing Auburn, catching this big number at Alabama off of that overtime thriller.
Yeah, I feel like the Iron Bowl is kind of flying under the radar this year with both these teams coming off a loss last week, but it's still very much an important game. I mean, it's going to be hard for some of these teams with the pressure on them in this final week, this rivalry week, to close out spots into the playoff. And Alabama's sitting right there on the outside. If they win this game and 1 or 2 teams loses, maybe we see an ACC team lose and they no longer have 2 spots locked up, or we get another upset somewhere else. It's going to be hard for some of these good but not great teams to close it out. We saw it just Thursday night. Tulane had a chance to lock up a spot where they would be very much in contention for a playoff spot if they just won out, and they laid an egg against Memphis. So it's going to be hard for those types of teams to close out these games with all that pressure. So I think this is still a critical matchup with playoff implications if Alabama's to win. The reason I'm on Auburn in this game, though, I was shocked that this was a double-digit spread. If you listen to the show last week, you're probably not surprised that I'm on Auburn again based on everything I said in my reasoning for taking them against Texas A&M. They can run the ball. Jarquez Hunter is one of the best, most physical running backs in the country. They can move the ball on the ground. And the key to beating Alabama is running the ball and controlling the clock. We've seen it in all of their losses this year. Last week against Oklahoma, the Sooners had 50 rushing attempts. They held the ball for 34 minutes. Their loss to Vandy earlier this year, Vandy had 54 rush attempts, held the ball for a ridiculous 42 minutes in that game. Their loss against Tennessee, now Tennessee runs a very up-tempo offense, so they didn't dominate time of possession because they never do with their style. But they did turn to the run game and lean heavily into it, ran the ball 43 times. Now, teams that win games run the ball more. Obviously, we know that. Just looking at rushing attempts is not the key, but man, when you're getting over 50 rushing attempts, that's like triple option type numbers. So these teams were able to just dominate Alabama on the ground and lean very heavily on the run. And that's what Auburn wants to do. They want to be in this type of matchup, and it's exactly how you beat an Alabama team. Looking at this matchup a little bit in terms of how these two particular teams match up based on opponent adjusted yards before contact. Auburn ranks 40th, Alabama ranks 74th. So Auburn should be able to push that defensive line around a little bit and create some room. Yards after contact, this is Jarquez Hunter bread and butter. They rank second in yards after contact per attempt. Alabama is good in this area. They rank 17th, but still a slight edge towards Auburn. And then we have to point out injuries. This is probably going to be the worst defense of a kind of mediocre Alabama defense to begin with that we've seen all year. They lost starting linebacker last week, Deontay Lawson. They were already playing without starting strong safety Keon Sabb, which hurts their ability to stack the box with that extra safety. Also playing without starting edge defender Quandarius Robinson. They're down some big, key, important players to stop this run game. So I think it's going to be an even worse unit this week than we've seen from them in some of these other games. So I'm expecting this to just be the Jarquez Hunter show. I think Jarquez Hunter has a huge day. I like Auburn to keep this game very close, maybe even win outright. I don't think it's crazy, even with a 12-point spread, to think that Auburn could just simply dominate this game and pull out a close win.
All right, Ryan, so you got an outright dog potentially in Auburn, catching upwards of 13. Shop around, you can get a 13 on this one now. You've got an outright dog that you like in South Carolina, potentially at Clemson, but grab the points there. They are catching 3. And then, of course, you're laying the short number under a touchdown. You can get 5 if you're shopping around on the Texas Longhorns taking on Texas A&M on the road. 3 great games. One's at noon, one's at 3:30, one's at 7:30 tomorrow. A busy schedule. So, Ryan, I'll let you get back to enjoying the college football games that are on right now. And thanks for joining us. As always, make sure that you guys are following Ryan over on X. You can see his Twitter handle if you rewind a little bit. And, of course, he writes up all these games with detailed analysis over at sharpfootballanalysis.com. There's Ryan McCrystal's X handle. So make sure that you are following him over at X. Quick reminder that you can go to sharp.football to get in on our Black Friday special. We are running 73% off everything on the website. That is an insane discount on anything, a weekly, a monthly, a season-long package. You can get it all there. All the prices for the rest of the season packages have been discounted, and you can still get it at this price. We are talking you can get it for just around $30 per week if you buy a season-long package, and that is insane for the amount of information that we are sharing and the records that we've had this season, where we have given over 500 betting recommendations that are hitting 59%. You don't get results like that every year. This is our best year ever. I've been doing this for nearly 20 years now, and I've never had a season as strong as this. 5-0 Monday night, 6-1 last night in Thanksgiving games. I highly recommend you get involved using Sharp 73 on the website. And make sure that you go over to Sleeper and enter the code SHARP when you sign up. They'll price match you up to $1,500 and get involved that way. All right, let's go to Pam. We'll bring Pam in. We're going to hit several NFL games. And the first game up, Pam, is Seahawks at Jets. We've got a big game here for Aaron Rodgers off the bye. There was a lot of speculation. Would Aaron Rodgers even play this game? Then they say, yes, Aaron Rodgers is playing. Aaron Rodgers is off the injury report for the first time in a while. Aaron Rodgers is feeling strong. That being said, you're fading the narrative that Aaron Rodgers is going to have a good game, Pam. You're looking at the Seattle Seahawks, which is down to a pick 'em at most spots. So you don't actually have to lay any points. This line, when there was speculation that Aaron Rodgers was not going to play, this line got as high as 2.5. It is back all the way down to being a pick 'em. The total is sitting at 42 to 41, 41 being a key number. So I'd shop around if you're looking to join Pam. She is going to be going on the Seahawks and the under. Pam, you're off of a great week last week on the show. I think you hit every single thing except for one. You had like 7 recommendations. I think you went 6-1 here. So let's continue the hot streak. What do you like about the Seahawks and the under in this one?
Well, if the line is down to Seattle as a pick 'em, I love that even more because the article, I wrote it at 2 and now it's down to a pick. So I love the Seahawks definitely to win this game, and then the under on 42 because of the Jets' defensive struggles post Robert Saleh. Ever since they got rid of him, it was the strength of this team. Where is it gone? It's kind of like completely diminished ever since firing him. It's just a different story. The Jets are 31st in points per drive, which is the Jaguars and the Raiders. And in their passing game, they've been exposed to giving up 8 yards per pass attempt. That's 27th in the league. The Seahawks have one offense, pass the ball. So we know, even if it is inefficient at best, we know that that's what they're going to be doing. That's where the guys with the New York and the Jets defense, they've taken just a major step back here over in the last few weeks. They don't have a strong offensive output to help with this team in any sort of way. So for me, this is just a recipe for a low scoring struggle from the Jets offense. Now, what I do like about backing the Seahawks is their defensive surge. This is a team where maybe they're a little bit inept offensively, but the defense has really been humming here as of late. Their defense has been really hot over the last 3 games. They've held opponents to 6.8 yards per pass attempt, despite facing some pretty good quarterback categorized Matthew Stafford, Brock Purdy, and Murray. They've also been one of the best teams at getting off the field. Seattle's defense has held opponents without 38% of their possessions. That's the 3rd best rate in the league. Now against the run, they've been even more stout over the past 3 weeks. James Conner, 8 yards on 7 carries. Christian McCaffrey, 72 yards on 19 carries. Kyren Williams, 69 yards, 22 attempts. So if the Jets do try to get anything going with the ground game, or if it's even Aaron Rodgers, whoever is under center, if he decides to play, not play, whoever the backup, it's going to be forced to throw. It's hard to see New York putting up any bit of points. Now, which is also why I like the under on 41.5, because both of these teams, their defenses still makes up, it's 2 teams that are going in opposite directions defensively, but neither offense is lighting it up. We know about all of the problems with the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers just hasn't been the same in his return this season. He hasn't built any type of rapport from any of his receivers. There's even like Garrett Wilson, they're just not maximizing the talents of the players that they have on roster. So I don't have any confidence that, again, Seattle defense, that's going to change all of a sudden just because Aaron Rodgers says, hey, I am still playing and maybe I want to play again next year. But on the Jets offense, pretty anemic. Quarterback play has been inconsistent. The offensive line is shaky. They're struggling to score points. But honestly, the same could be said about Seattle, which is why I took the under last week for Seattle against the Cardinals. And for all of the reasons of I don't like Seattle's offense, and yet they ended up winning the game outright, pushing the total under. But it was pretty much the same narrative of the Seattle offense didn't do anything, but it was the Seattle's defense that was able to produce. Now, they do have capabilities more so on Seattle. They've leaned heavily on that defense in recent weeks, but they are playing a more conservative, balanced style. That's really limiting the tempo of the game in their recent matchups. I'm thinking that this game is going to be something like 20-10, 21-13 type of style. So I'm comfortably taking under 41.5. But the bottom line is, in this matchup, why I love Seattle as a pick'em, why I love the under on 42 is because the Seahawks defense playing at a top-tiered level as of late. The Jets' offense is struggling to move the ball. The Jets' defense, once elite, has regressed ever since Ollie's departure. So I like backing Seattle, making sense. Pairing it up with the under on 42 is more of just like complimentary wager to the teams where they're trending. So I like Seattle. I love the under on 42, and I think this is just going to be another one of those games where you don't really want to watch, but it's the ones that you tend to find value on.
All right. Well, you're going to go in an opposite direction here. You're liking low score, ugly style game here, Seahawks and the Jets. Now we're going to go the opposite direction. You got the Eagles taking on the Baltimore Ravens in what is going to be a thrilling game. You've got two outstanding running backs that switched teams this past offseason. We've got Derrick Henry, who I know that you love, over on the Baltimore Ravens. We've got Saquon Barkley, who I'm sure you love as well, over on the Philadelphia Eagles. Great running backs, quarterbacks that are mobile, going head-to-head, NFC versus AFC. We rarely see a team like this play another team like this, 9-2 versus 8-4. I can't wait for this game. It's obviously the marquee game. It is the only 4:25 kickoff. There's only 3 games that are being played in the late slate, Pam. 2 games at 4 o'clock and 1 game at 4:25. This is that one game. All of our eyes are going to be on it. And you like the over at 51 points. You can get it widely available at 51 points right now. Why don't you tell us why you think this game is going to hit at least 51 points?
I don't love Derrick Henry. I love Kane Derrick Henry. Yes, he is my favorite player. But yeah, I love Eagles at Ravens over 51 points. And I want to start first with the Eagles. Philadelphia thrives on chunk plays. They've outgained opponents in plays of 20 yards or more by 24 plays. That's the largest margin in the league, which I pulled from Retrievar stat, which has been really helpful this season if you're not utilizing it. Definitely helpful for fantasy. But the Eagles are also tied for the league with 12 touchdowns from outside the red zone. So this offense isn't just producing, they're not trying to grind it downfield. They are built to score fast from anywhere on the field. Baltimore, not a slouch. The Ravens lead the NFL in generating explosive plays, the most offensive snaps gaining 10 plus yards, the most offensive snaps gaining 20 plus yards. So to top it off, they're averaging a league high 8 yards per passing play. Simply put, the Eagles and the Ravens are two offenses that are built to score. Now, I do want to talk about the run game because the perception is you have two strong running backs, two strong rushing offenses. These are going to be type of grind and pound type of teams. Explosive run games where while everyone else is trying to use game control, clock control, grind it down, play tempo, offenses built off their run games are built for explosiveness. Baltimore is averaging 102 more rushing yards per game than their opponent. That's the best differential in the league. And right behind them is Philadelphia, 94 rushing yards per game. So the Ravens' ground attack is lethal, and Philadelphia's run defense, both of these, you can look at them and say, hey, they're stout, but neither team has really faced a run game as diverse or as explosive as Philadelphia, as Baltimore. And we have seen some vulnerabilities, at least from the Eagles. Bijan Robinson had 97 yards, 6.9 yards per carry. So imagine what the Ravens duo is going to do between Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. Now, on the flip side, you have the Ravens run defense that is also considered to be stout, and absolutely that's the best run defense in the league, but they showed vulnerability last week, susceptible to big plays, giving up 6.7 yards per carry to J.K. Dobbins and another 7.3 yards per carry to Justin Herbert. I mean, that alone gives me some pause of like, was that an off game, or is this potential like a leaky faucet that could soon explode? Now you're going up against a much capable committee duo from Philadelphia. So now you have Eagles Philadelphia duo, Jalen Hurts. He could have a monster game. And if you just look at both of these teams, they don't do methodical clock control styles. They are power players, power pushers. They want to get downfield and get downfield quick. So instead, we have offenses that are designed for explosiveness. So this isn't going to be slow, grind it out. It's going to be track meet. Both teams have the firepower to put up points quickly, and that's exactly what I'm banking on. So I love the over on 51 as the play because both offenses rank at the top in explosive plays. Both teams dominate the run game, can break off big chunks, and neither defense has faced an opponent unlike the other. Built for big plays, coming into this with scoring form, neither defense has faced a complete offense like what they're going to see on Sunday. And for that, I'm thinking this is going to be potentially something like 36-34, 31-28 type of game, comfortably over hitting the over on the total. So I'll take over 51 between the Eagles and the Ravens.
All right, and last but not least, Pam, you've got the Bucks at the Panthers, and we're looking at a player prop in this game. I think this game's going to be a lot of fun. I'm interested in seeing how Bryce Young plays. Does he have a continuation of that I shudder to say brilliance that we saw against the Kansas City Chiefs defense last week? Are we going to get some upside from this Panthers team, or are they going to come back down to earth against Todd Bowles? But you like a player prop here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, which has been a fun bunch of late. What do you like and why?
Well, when I wrote this, when I was preparing for Sunday slate, it was on Tuesday and Wednesday before a lot of props were out. So I was trying to look for something that was plus money. And the thing that I landed on was Rachaad White for Tampa Bay, anytime touchdown at plus 140. The Bucs have one of the best red zone offenses in the league. They're third in touchdown rate. You're going up against a Panthers defense who probably looked better than they actually are, going against the Chiefs last week, who just underperformed offensively yet again. So I'm not at all worried about that. So I think that the Bucs can definitely continue to find success, and they're going to find their scoring opportunities. Rachaad White, he's founded the end zone 6 times this season, 2 on the ground, 4 in the air. So when you have a player that has this type of versatility, that's going to make him a nightmare matchup to defend in some of these critical moments. Now on the other side, Carolina's defense, right for picking, they're 23rd in rushing touchdowns allowed and middle of the pack against passing touchdowns. But to make it ever worse, they're league backfield touches per game. So I definitely think White himself can have a monster game. It's a perfect setup for him to exploit some of this mismatches, whether he's used as a runner or even as a receiver. And if you just look at game flow alone, with Tampa Bay as 6-point road favorites, this game suggests that the Bucs are going to control the tempo. That means leaning on White to close out the drives. You're getting plus 140 for him to have a touchdown on something where I think that the Bucs themselves can put up 30 plus points. So that's giving me multiple opportunities right now to get White at plus money, multiple ways to find the end zone against a vulnerable Panthers defense that's probably getting a little bit too much credit after last week's performance against the Chiefs. So Rachaad White, anytime touchdown, plus 140.
All right, Pam, 3 great games, broken them down beautifully. Thank you so much for joining us this week. Make sure that you guys are following Pam over on X. Matt, can you throw up her graphic again? That is her handle. Go ahead and follow her over there. And of course, she is writing up these games and more over at sharpfootballanalysis.com. So if you want to get additional analysis, I highly suggest that you go over to sharpfootballanalysis.com. You can read more of what Pam has written, breaking down NFL games from a betting perspective, from a props perspective, up on the Sharp Football Analysis website. Okay, with that being said, let's go ahead and jump into the NFL referee bets, and we've got a special surprise for you, Joe. This was brought to us weeks ago by a fan. I see you guys in the chat. Thank you guys so much for following. We want to get to some of your comments and some of your questions momentarily, but what I will say first and foremost is that one of you guys in the chat is also pretty talented and loves the show and wanted to contribute something to the show. It's taken a couple of weeks for us to actually get it uploaded into the show, so we apologize for that. But I want to credit Jimmy Meal, I think I'm pronouncing it correctly, with this next intro to talk about referees. There we go. So we bring in Joe Gibbs. You can follow him on X at NFL Ref Stats 1. Joe, you've got a couple of games to discuss with us this week, so let's dive right into it as the show is ongoing. Let's first talk about the Steelers at the Bengals, and you want to talk about Shawn Hochuli, our old nemesis. What do you have to say about Shawn Hochuli? By the way, before we get into this, Joe, we can bring it to Joe, but we've got that Auburn-Alabama game that Ryan was talking about, where it was 13. You could catch 13 with Auburn, a Pinnacle, and a couple of other spots, 12.5 elsewhere. That has taken some sharp money just now. That at Circa is down to 10.5. That at Heritage is down to 10. It is down to 11 or 11.5 at many other spots. So Ryan got involved just in time. Hopefully you guys are paying attention and bet it just in time, because now instead of catching 13 points or 12.5, you are only able to catch 10.5 to 11 points at a lot of spots. So with that said, Ryan, great job on getting ahead of the market movement there. Joe, why don't you talk to us a little bit about what to expect from Shawn Hochuli when the Steelers take on the Bengals?
Okay, so back-to-back weeks with Hochuli. We covered him last week with the Lions at the Colts, and so here we go again. kind of the same story, really. 64% of his overall penalties assessed on the offense. That's number one in the NFL. In that combination of false starts and offensive holding, they rank number one in penalties per game in those two categories. They call the fewest defensive holding, defensive pass interference combinations. And then lastly, the third down play, which is the money down. The league average is about 50-50 on offense versus defense as far as calling penalties. The Hochuli crew, 85% of their third down penalties on the offense. So right there, everything tilts towards the defense having the advantage. And he's 8-2 to the under this season with his games averaging just 38 points. So that's what we've got right there straight up the bat. As far as big picture with Hochuli, divisional home teams, that would be the Bengals this week. 15, 23-1 against the spread in his career, 40%. Divisional totals, this is a big one, and we've talked about this before over the years. 26, 12-1 to the under when Shawn Hochuli officiates divisional matchups. That's 70% to the under. These two actually played 2 years ago, 2022. Steelers, a 7-point underdog at Cincinnati. Pittsburgh won outright, +7. It went to overtime, 23-20, stayed under the total. Good thing here, the Cincinnati Bengals, they're as well equipped as any team, maybe outside of Detroit, to handle Hochuli's issues as far as the excessive offensive penalties. In hard numbers, in raw numbers, the Bengals offense is the least penalized unit in the NFL. So they're very efficient on the offensive side of the ball. And Pittsburgh has actually gotten much better. Once Wilson went out as quarterback, once Wilson came in as quarterback and Fields went out, they've become more efficient from an offensive penalty perspective. So both teams should be okay. As far as the winner goes, I'd take Pittsburgh plus the 3. It's going to be a close game. Cincinnati seems to play in a lot of close games, and I actually hope they win selfishly just to keep them in the mix. However faint that playoff opportunity might be, a win for Cincinnati at least keeps them in the mix for the AFC playoff hunt. But I'd have to side with Pittsburgh here and obviously the under.
Yeah, now we got Exile Cultivation who said Joe Gibbs absolutely hit the nail on the head with the Green Bay Packers crew last night. Talk to us about what you were expecting and what you saw in that game.
The Packers game last night?
Yeah, exactly. They were saying you hit the nail on the head there.
Yeah, I put some stuff out on my Twitter account, just pretty much what to watch, and it kind of went right on point. You know, a lot of false starts, a lot of defensive pre-snap penalties from the Packers, a lot of offensive pre-snap penalties from the Dolphins, and the big one, and I point this out, and people got angry about it in the game. There was that roughing the passer penalty on Tua that wasn't called roughing the passer. But the Sean Smith crew doesn't emphasize that penalty. They just don't. But they make up for it with excessive unnecessary roughness penalties. And I've talked to you about this. These primetime games, for whatever reason, actually, I think I know the reason, they get excessive amount of unnecessary roughness penalties called. And that's kind of where Smith made up for it. He called 2 of those last night, but Tua didn't get that unnecessary roughness penalty that a lot of quarterbacks would have got. Like if that was Mahomes or Burrow or someone like that, they'd probably get the flag, but Tua didn't get it. That was at the end of the game.
Yeah, that was. So let's move on to the last game that you want to hit. And it's a game that Pam was on. She likes the over in this game. I don't know if your conclusions might draw us in a different direction or not, but you can share that with us as the Eagles take on the Ravens. And we got Craig Wrolstad at the head of this one. What do you think that Craig is going to bring to the table here? And do you think that there's any looks that we should have from a betting perspective as a result?
Well, to Pam's point about the over, I mean, you can make arguments both sides for this, for either team or the over or the under. I'll say this much: Craig Wrolstad 7-4 to the over this season, but not so fast on that one. It sounds good, but his games are only averaging 44.8 points. That's only 12th in the NFL. He's 7-4 to the over because his totals have been so low. 50.5, I think this one's at. You can make an argument both ways. If you told me it was going to be, 27-20, I wouldn't be shocked. You could tell me it's 34-30, I wouldn't be shocked. So I don't have an opinion on the total. Wrolstad, again, we talked about him last week because we did the Packers and 49ers game. They put that extra emphasis around the line of scrimmage. Delay of game, defensive offsides, your favorite penalty, I'll keep going back to it, ineligible man downfield. This crew ranks second in the NFL for that particular penalty. Baltimore, they've played 3 games with Wrolstad. That's it in the Lamar Jackson era. They're 3-0 straight up and against the spread. They've all been on the road, though. This will be the Eagles' second game with this crew this season. If you remember, their first one was back in Week 2, Monday Night Football versus Atlanta, and that was the most penalized game this season for the Eagles. They had 9 penalties, predominantly on the offense. ineligible man downfield, false starts, offensive holding. So this crew is going to focus more on the offensive side of the ball. And to tail off what I said about Hochuli's crew, they call a fewest combination of defensive holding, defensive pass interference. This crew, the Wrolstad crew, calls the second fewest of defensive holding, defensive pass interference. They also call very few defensive penalties on third down. So when you look at it like that, the defenses should have the advantage here. I like Baltimore in the game. I like teams when they're going into the bye. But look, if Philadelphia wins a game, I'm not going to be shocked. But I do like Baltimore in this one.
Okay, so we got a ref, Craig Wrolstad, leaning a little bit towards Baltimore. We appreciate that, Joe. 2 games to be on the lookout for: the Steelers-Cincinnati Bengals game. Pay attention to Shawn Hochuli in that one. And we've got the game that Joe was just talking about, the 4:25 Eastern time kick between the Ravens and the Eagles. That's Joe's contact info. Go follow him over on X, NFL Ref Stats 1, and make sure that you check his articles where he writes up not just a couple of games, but all of the referees that call games in the NFL and some of their trends and tendencies over at sharpfootballanalysis.com. So make sure that you head over to sharpfootballanalysis.com and check that out. Okay, we have a couple of props to get to, and I'll get to a couple of questions real quick, and then we'll hit these player props. We went 3-0 last week on these longest props. We went 2-0 the week before. I think we're 5-1, something along those lines, the last 6 that we've had the last 3 weeks. Because 1 week, I think we only did 1. At any rate, I want to say we're 15-8 on the season with these from me. So we've got 2 more to give to you guys. And let's see. The Joseph Estrada says, hope everyone jumped in on the Black Friday deal. The props yesterday smashed. This is the time of year that I normally have a lot more success as we trend. If you guys have been with me for several years now, you know later on in the season, lots of data to choose from, lots of injuries that we can then play off of and pay attention to. So the closer you're paying attention to the injuries, the coaches, the trending data, and the longer sample size of data, like the more accurate some of my predictions tend to be from a props perspective, from a betting perspective as well. I know there are some groups out there that like to get in early and then they slow their volume down late. I'm sort of the opposite. I mean, as you can see from our volume this year, we've been high all year long, though. It's just been a great season, seeing things pretty clearly. So we'll hope that continues, but obviously off to a great start this week. Okay. What we are going to do here from a props perspective, I'm not sure if I missed any comments that we needed to hit here. I appreciate all you guys following along. Make sure that you are over on YouTube as well, and you subscribe to our channel on YouTube. Like and thumbs up this episode because we'll be back with you on Tuesday. We'll be back with you on next Friday. We're here every single Tuesday and Friday, noon Eastern, sharing some of our favorite betting angles, discussing coaches and how they botched certain things, and what coaches did well. I like talking about what coaches did poorly because I think that's more instructive for the future. But I love complimenting guys that I feel like are doing good jobs, or plays that were good, or things of that nature. So we get into a little bit of that as well on the Tuesday show. All right. With that said, let us, I guess we got to wait a second here. I just sent an advance notice to subscribers. So if you're familiar with what we do here as a subscriber, we send out a notification, generally speaking, except on game days where it's a little bit more difficult to do that. But we send a heads up, letting people know that, hey, you're going to get something shortly. We try to give you guys a little bit of advance notice so that you're ready. So that is just gone out of the system, but because of the number of subscribers and whatnot, it takes a little while to cycle through the system. So I got to wait a second before I can actually send out the official recommendations, and we send that to everybody. Had these selected prior to the show, and I'm going to fire them off here to subscribers. And so we're going to get into these right now. Where I want you to go if you're looking to tail us on some of these, go to the receiving props. And some of you guys have been saying that Thank you, Ray. You got the Easy Gibbs Cash. Easy Gibbs Cash. He hit that number twice. Kind of wish we didn't do content to keep these types of things to ourselves, but we gotta do the show to get some picks out there and get people on board. So we're giving out some of our favorite things on this show, but absolutely, he hit that one 2 different times. The way that you could kind of give back, even if you're not a subscriber, you don't want to pay anything for any picks ever, is at least subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's free. Give us a thumbs up. That's free. But if you want to get 73% off and get this stuff this week, that is a very big discount. Use the code SHARP73 over on sharp.football to access it. Okay, go to the New Orleans Saints game. Go to the receiving props. Let me pull it up here on my end. Go to the receiving props. Go to longest reception. And go to just gotta wait a second. Have to make sure that this gets okay. I always want to make sure that the subs are getting this at exactly the same time or a little bit earlier. So they just got it. Go to the longest reception for Taysom Hill, and we're going to go over 13.5, which is where it is everywhere. The best line on this one is at Pinnacle at -103. You can also get it at DK at -110. You can get it at MGM at -110. You can get it at Caesars at -109. You can get it at Hard Rock at -110. You can get it at Bet365 at -110. You guys can share. There you go. There's Jimmy in the chat. Excellent job, Jimmy. Thank you so much. Great job. Exhal says great job there. So we're looking at the Taysom Hill longest reception over 13.5. A couple things on Taysom Hill here. Give me 1 second to pull it up. Oh, it's in this file. If you guys got Taysom Hill at 13.5 longest elsewhere, feel free to drop it in the chat and let me know what you are getting there. While you're doing this, I want to just get out there. We'll talk about these in a second. Go to longest reception for Bucky Irving. Longest reception for Bucky Irving. Go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers game. Go to receiving props. Go to Bucky Irving. We're going over 10.5 longest reception for Bucky Irving. You can get that pretty much everywhere as well. I see Pinnacle has it at -112. MGM has it at -120. Hard Rock -120. 10.5 at ESPN Bet -120. -115 at Bet365. So that's another prop. That's the second prop that we're going to do is is Bucky Irving longest reception over 10.5 at all these spots. It looks like ESPN just pulled it down. Pinnacle just pulled it down. It looks like some of these spots are pulling it down. So I still see it at MGM. I still see it at Bet365. DK has it down. Somebody check FanDuel. I don't know what they have there. It's back up at ESPN and Hard Rock at 11.5 now. Still at 10.5 at Bet365. Taysom is up to 15.5 at DK. Let me see here. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Taysom Hill real quick. Oh, one book state, that is rough, Brett. That is rough. Let's first talk about Taysom here and why I like some of his receiving yards. He had this ridiculous rushing day yesterday that's obviously not going to be replicated in terms of his, not yesterday, but his last game, which is not going to be replicated. But I think some of the coaching points from both his head coach, the interim head coach, Darren Rizzi, as well as Clint Kubiak, are instructive here, in addition to just his usage that he's had. So they were on a bye week 12, the Saints were. Week 9, he has 41 yards on 4 catches. Week 10, he has 36 yards on 2 catches, but that week he had an 88-yard, if you remember, an 88-yard touchdown run down the sideline that was nullified by a penalty. I want to say it was one of those damn ineligible man downfield penalties, but I'm not positive. So he had an 88-yard touchdown on that game that was nullified. And then last week, he had, I want to say, 10 targets, 8 catches for 50 yards. Now, he has had a longest reception. What did we give out here? What was the... I got too many tabs open here. This is brutal. Too many... Okay, 13 and a half. He has hit the over in 13 and a half in 4 straight games. His longest reception over 13 and a half in 4 straight games against the Chargers, Panthers, Falcons, and the Browns last week. So he's gone over this number 4 straight weeks. And you listen to what the coaches are saying. His offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak, said, when he's been healthy, we definitely want to use him to the max. When you get into the game, I thought in that last game it was Taysom's day. You want to ride the hot hand and keep giving him the ball. On it, whether there's any reservation of using Hill too much in light of his injuries, no, absolutely not. We're ready for Taysom to play every play of the game. I went back last night and watched the film of all of Taysom Hill's targets over the last 4 games that he's played. Since week 8, because he missed some time. He played weeks 1, 2, 4, missed some time, came back week 8, played week 8, 9. He's not running a ridiculous number of routes, but the way that he is being used there, they're not lining him up in the backfield. They're lining him up at tight end, but doing so many different things, a lot of screens with him, a lot of design plays with him. Clint Kubiak is very creative. And so I would believe if there's a place that we're going to see his ceiling, because you're not going to get that yardage that you got from him in that last game. But where I think his ceiling is going to be cut a little bit would be on the rushing stuff. I don't think we're going to see as much explosiveness and consistency out of that run game and the attempts. He's competing for more guys on the rushing side of things. But on the receiving side of things, I think there's plenty of opportunities. Keep in mind, they won both of their last 2 games, and they won them by 3 points and like 14 points, 17 points, whatever that final score is, 21 points against the Cleveland Browns. And they're talking about his usage. And I think Darren Rizzi's quote was really interesting, the interim head coach. They said, we looked at the tape and collectively felt that we got to get this guy the ball and get him more involved. And they went back, they said, and they looked at the games that the Saints won. And when the Saints were winning games, it was because Taysom Hill was a little bit more involved in the offense or contributing big plays in the offense. And so they wanted to get him more involved from the beginning in a lot of their games because they think that that's a driver to their success. They said, I think our usage with him these last couple of weeks is really what we're kind of trying to trend towards. A little bit of everything, not too much of any one particular thing. He's a huge part of what we do. So they're going to get him involved a fair amount. I don't think we're going to see that ceiling on the ground game potentially, but I do think they just don't have that many receivers in the passing game. And so I think we're going to see targets to Taysom Hill. And if you look at the Rams and how they perform against tight end targets, is not great. They allow the 7th most yards per attempt, and also rank like bottom 6 or 7 in EPA per snap 2 tight end targets. So I just am liking Taysom Hill. And when you go with his longest, you don't need to worry about his total. Now, I like his total over as well. Don't get me wrong. But I think when you focus on the longest, he's likely to get there. Let's talk a little bit about Bucky Irving now momentarily. And what do I got here on Bucky Irving? Where do I got the Bucky Irving notes? Okay, here we go. I think here we go. Okay, so you've got Bucky Irving, who finally, for the first time all season, took more snaps than Rachaad White. Now, Bucky has gotten more touches than Rachaad White for several weeks now, but this past week was the first time that he actually had more snaps as well. I'm trying to find, I've got some written analysis here about, okay, weeks 1 to 7, total running back touches. White had 86, Irving had 82. So weeks 1 to 7, White was a little bit ahead, but it was close. Since week 8, Irving has had 60. White has only had 48. So Irving has not only stepped in front, but is dominating a little bit. And then we also see that we saw a couple of one Sean Tucker fumble. And we know that last week they tried to get Sean Tucker involved on that first drive of the game. They basically came out and said that they were going to try to do that because they liked Sean Tucker a little bit and they weren't sure how to get him going, because once Bucky gets the handoffs, then he just starts to get going. So you don't really want to take him out to put a guy like Sean Tucker into the game. So like, how can we manufacture a few touches to Sean Tucker? Well, it'll be at the beginning of the game. Let's get him in there at the early stage of the game. So they stuck him in there, and then he fumbled at the goal line, I want to say on his like second or third carry. I think that they're going to slow down the Sean Tucker stuff a little bit, depending upon game state here. And ride Bucky, who got more snaps last week and who had more production last week, and obviously is a dangerous threat. And when you look at Bucky Irving, we took over 10.5 for his longest reception. He has hit this in 5 of the last 6 games. Has Bucky Irving gone over a longest reception of 10.5 yards? And if you look at the way that the Carolina Panthers defend running back receptions, they rank well below average in yards per reception allowed to running backs. And the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, yeah, they are going to slow down. Like, they've got Mike Evans back, so it sort of stretches out the defense, gives them more to think about. But I really think here, if the Carolina Panthers are a little bit more competitive, that's just going to keep some of these targets to Bucky flowing, right? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers were up big against the New York Giants last week. What was the final score? Like 30-7. They could run the ball late. They didn't have to do a whole lot there. But I do think that if the game is a little bit more competitive, more throughout the game, that we're going to see a couple more Bucky Irving targets. That being said, he still was targeted 6 times last week, which was, he was targeted 7 times 4 weeks ago. Other weeks it's been like 3 times. They do like to get Rachaad White. I do agree Rachaad White is the better guy to get involved from a receiving perspective rather than a running perspective. So all these backs, I mean, you're not getting like the full out usage. So there's a lot of variance potential here, and there's a lot of risk here as well. When you have such variance, it's not like we're going after a guy who is going to get 7 to 10 targets on a regular basis in games. You don't really know how things could go for Bucky Irving here, but I like betting on Bucky Irving. And it looks like somebody was dropping off on audio, but the rest of you guys have the audio. That game I'm really fascinated with. Dave Canales, now the coach of the Carolina Panthers, going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the coach that he formerly was calling plays for last season. How does that impact this game here the most? He knows about Baker Mayfield. He knows about some of the strengths and weaknesses of their offensive line from a blocking perspective. Could he be coaching up his own defense to try to take advantage of that? Yes. He also knows about Todd Bowles and his tendencies. He also knows about Todd Bowles' defense and what they do. and the personnel on that side of the ball because he's gone up against them every single week in practice for a full season. So could he have some edges on that side of the ball? Yes. So you've got this interesting dynamic of Dave Canales going up against his former team. I just want to we're going to see this matchup twice because they're in the same division. It's rare that, a guy who called plays is going to coach a team in the same division. But that's what happened here, and I'm interested to see the result of that and which side of the ball that helps a little bit. With that said, man, I think we're good. We've had a great show here on Friday after Thanksgiving. I hope that you guys are looking forward to additional football. I know some of you guys have been probably watching Colorado's game here where they are still up over Oklahoma State. They were up 21-0 midway through the first quarter, and no points have been scored since then. It's still 21-0. Colorado is up with just about 2 minutes to go in the first half. We've got the Raiders taking on the Chiefs in about an hour and a half. So I hope you guys are excited about that game as well. That game, we're seeing the Kansas City Chiefs down to, I want to say, their third string kicker because they obviously their starter, Harrison Butker, he's out for multiple weeks with his procedure. I think that he had to get done. And their second string guy was Spencer Schrader. He's now out with, I want to say, a hamstring that he must have strained last week. So now they're down to their third string kicker. And for a team that's had to rely a lot on kickers, that becomes a little bit more nervous each and every time that you're moving down, especially from Harrison Butker to somebody else. And then now the guy who's worse than that guy. So it'll be interesting to see if they get a little bit more aggressive for the Kansas City Chiefs when they get closer to the end zone, that sort of thing. But all that said, thank you guys for the support on the show. I appreciate you, Exile, giving your love and your time to us. We tried to do the same, obviously, preparing a great show for you guys between Pam and Ryan and Joe and myself, trying to give you some of our best looks and help you guys win some money this upcoming weekend. Thank you, Nick, as well. Continued holiday fun and festivities for all of you guys. I hope that you enjoy your Friday, your Black Friday, get some great deals out there. Save. I'm personally in the market for a good snowblower, like an electric snowblower. So if anybody's got totally off the wall, but if anybody has good recommendations for electric snowblowers, happy to shoot them my way over on X at Sharp Football. Let me know which one you've used and what you like about it. But I'm looking for a nice 2-stage electric snowblower, battery-powered snowblower, battery-powered, not electric, but battery-powered, not gas, battery, to get today. So I'm going to be in the market for that. If you guys are interested in checking out our Black Friday deal, use the code SHARP73, get you 73% off. You're not going to be able to get this price for cheaper than that the rest of the season. Black Friday deal. We didn't do it this much last year. We didn't do a discount this high last year. We've got it this year because our records are better this year than they were last year. We want to pass that savings along to you, get you guys involved. So everybody have a great day. Enjoy the Black Friday savings, and we'll see you guys on Tuesday at noon Eastern. Good luck this weekend.
Go back up.